I guess at a more fundamental level, why is retiring now different than it was 50 years ago? And why do you think that we need to approach it differently, or why advisors might want to think about equipping themselves with tools or processes to think a little bit differently about retirement?
Definitely. So, I mean, for one, people are living longer. I mean, the industry paradigm now is that people live about 8,000 days in retirement or 22 years. And I mean, there's more time to think about the things you want to do, achieve, and sort of see in this period. And especially as people are living longer, it's also extending sort of their healthier years. So it's giving more possible opportunities to accomplish all these things, and setting yourself up financially, not only to extend and cover this entire time, but also to fund the things you want to do, and sort of enjoy the fruits of your.
This is the Future Ready Advisor, a show about transforming your financial advisory practice. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan, a wealth management consultant, behavioral scientist, and keynote speaker. In this podcast, I dive deep into the real challenges advisors face and bring you insightful conversations with top industry experts. Together, we'll explore practical strategies grounded in behavioral science to help you better serve your clients, optimize your time, and build a future-ready practice. I'm your host, Sam Sivarajan. Welcome to today's episode of the Future Ready Advisor. Today, I'm here with Ryan Donovan, the founder of online retirement platform Retirement.ca. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the introduction, Sam. It's a pleasure to speak again. I really appreciate the opportunity.
I'm looking forward to our chat. Let me quickly introduce you to our audience. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Retirement.ca, a platform that offers resources for the non-financial aspects of retirement. With a background in financial services, Ryan created Retirement to help individuals navigate the lifestyle and psychological challenges of retirement. Now, I think this is a timely topic, Ryan, and I'm looking forward to diving in. But before we do, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself. You started your career as a product manager before founding Retirement.ca. Can you talk a little bit about some of the key moments that led you to shift your focus towards retirement planning, particularly the non-financial aspects?
Yeah, for sure. So, as a product manager, and whenever you're building anything for that matter, I'd say the first thing to look at is fulfilling needs and solving problems. And having had the fortune of working a brief stint in the financial services industry, I had the pleasure of working alongside some very talented advisors. And one recurring theme that we discuss time and time again after meetings was seeing that retired or retiring clients sometimes didn't even want to talk about their finances. And we sort of began to, recognize this pattern that once people's finances were at least headed in the right direction, the scope of the conversations and the main concerns of clients shifted to things like, where am I going to travel? How am I going to stay busy with the grandkids? What happens when I lose my insurance coverage from work? And sometimes they'd go whole meetings without even discussing their portfolio. So it became pretty apparent that this sort of undue burden falls on financial advisors to also act as their clients' retirement advisors. And I think of a lot of advisors would be the first ones to admit that they're not really interested or even equipped to be that authority on the wider retirement topics. So there was certainly a gap in the market for a resource to answer these sorts of questions.
And that begs a more philosophical question. You made the point that a lot of financial advisors don't feel that they're equipped to answer these types of questions. I guess at a more fundamental level, why is retiring now different than it was 50 years ago? And why do you think that we need to approach it differently, or why advisors might want to think about equipping themselves with tools or processes to think a little bit differently about retirement?
Definitely. So, I mean, for one, people are living longer. I mean, the industry paradigm now is that people live about 8,000 days in retirement or 22 years. And I mean, there's more time to think about the things you want to do, achieve, and sort of see in this period. And especially as people are living longer, it's also extending sort of their healthier years. So it's giving more possible opportunities to accomplish all these things, and setting yourself up financially, not only to extend and cover this entire time, but also to fund the things you want to do, and sort of enjoy the fruits of your hard labor. And then also paired with just sort of the possible opportunities because of the tech that's really supporting it and the tech that the industry's headed towards.
I wonder how much do you think that we're now, as in a lot of other aspects of our life, that we're sort of rethinking, what it means to be a parent, for example, or what it means to be a member of society? I think maybe if I can continue to be philosophical, that's evolved that thinking over the last, call it 50, 60 years. Do you think that's also, we see that in the retirement space, that we're not accepting retirement as this definition that we would have had in the past where, you collect your gold watch, you ride off into the sunset and, you're playing golf 5 days a week, for the rest of your life. Is that, I mean, was that ever a kind of a legitimate paradigm? And is that any longer a paradigm? What do you think?
Well, I think, like you said, the golf 5 days a week or sipping pina coladas on a beach, like I think that's what people strive for and why they work so hard. So that's a potential opportunity. But I mean, we're pretty funny creatures. Like we demand change, we demand meaning and purpose. And I think that once people actually reach that stage, and especially now that they're experiencing it for longer, that conversation to what am I going to do to fill this time other than golf 5 times a day, because there's a lot more hours left in the day other than a 4 hour round, really comes into question. And I think that now just being connected through all forms of communication, and now that the conversation just sort of not only broader but more instant, I think we're seeing that people are thinking the same thing. So I think maybe just because in the past people were kind of dealing with this problem by themselves, it wasn't really an open conversation, but luckily now it is, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a great point. And tools like Retirement.ca allows that kind of conversation or that sense of community to foster, so that people can have this conversation not quietly in a corner somewhere, but more openly, to bring some of these challenges, some of these questions, some of those things that I think we might have been feeling a little bit odd to kind of speak up. Like, this is supposed to be what I've worked my whole life for. Like, why am I feeling unfulfilled or unhappy? I think places like Retirement.ca that you've created, it helps solve that problem. So presumably that's one of the reasons, the impetus for setting it up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think speaking to sort of people coming together to discuss that, I mean, for us, we're looking everywhere across the internet to see where people are discussing these things and seeing, because that's for us too. Like, we don't want to be the only resource out there. We want to lead people towards other resources that maybe we don't offer, or people who are already further along in the chase than us. But I mean, things like Facebook groups, there's Facebook groups for retiring Canadians where people ask questions. And I mean, sometimes they're the most sound answers, but at least people are there for communication. So I think providing platforms where there's a little bit more structured conversation or maybe a little bit more authoritative answers, I think is really important. So that's certainly where we want to head in the direction with retirement as well. And not to get off topic, but just in terms of the number of people who this is affecting, I mean, we're just kind of at the start of the wave of it. The silver surfer movement, as it's neatly dubbed. I mean, in Canada alone, there's going to be 8,000 people retiring every single week for the next 15 years. And I mean, only 60% of them are going to know their retirement date 1 year in advance. And a third of them will even delay their retirement just because they don't have a plan in place. So, I mean, it's a pretty pressing issue. And I mean, the faster we can at least start carving away at addressing it, I think the more people is really going to help.
I think those are some really eye-opening statistics you've just shared. And I want to come on to the concept of hub and community a bit more in a second. But I want to touch on the fact that in retirement, at least the way that we have the conversation in Canada, to date, has been a focus on financial readiness for the most part. But your platform emphasizes really like the non-financial elements, like your lifestyle, your social network, your psychological readiness. How have you seen the retirement planning industry evolve in addressing those non-financial aspects? And what more is there to do than that you're hoping to solve with your platform?
Yeah, definitely. Well, going back to the start of sort of the inception of retirement, we luckily had a little bit of a longer runway to really assess where the market was, see existing players, what they were doing, which kind of helped us assess needs to fill and what gaps to fill. But even 3 years ago, the larger investment firms were providing training and documentation for their advisors on how to better service retiring clients. And I remember attending an online webinar by McKinsey that covered this topic exactly, touching on catering to non-financial needs and hierarchical needs, identifying stressors that clients may be facing. So I think that's really encouraging, especially to see then and where sort of the big players are moving. But certainly it's things like ourselves and other people in the industry who can really kind of spearhead at least being a little bit more agile and pushing that along. And then with the big banks, you can start to see the language in their advertising and their communications online shift from that more just dollars and cents conversation to the more lifestyle and aspirational branding. And whether that be because it's sort of just to get away as a competitive advantage or for altruistic broadening of the retirement conversation, I think it's really good either way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that there needs to be this broader conversation. If we're talking about advisors that are looking to solve the problem, the idea of being a one-trick pony, that you are only picking the right portfolio for retirement, it seems to me that the job of a truly holistic advisor that is looking to serve the clients doesn't stop when the day that they've retired, the client retires and they're about to start drawing down their portfolio. I think that there has to be a preparation of that client for the non-financial aspects of it, because it's a critical component, right? If you don't know, if you aren't clear as a pre-retiree, thinking through what you're going to do with your time, how you're going to replace your social network that you had from work, how are you going to fill that 40 hours that work took up, I think you don't really know how much money that you're going to need and how you're going to be spending it, right? So I think in order to do even that financial planning or portfolio setup and planning that a financial advisor's typical responsibilities include, without properly planning and preparing the client for retirement, it's hard to kind of estimate what might be that financial requirement.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, I mean, it's a true testament to where this industry is and the level of trust and comfort that clients have with their advisors. I mean, whether people are seeing them as sort of holistic retirement advisors currently, just because they're able to converse with them about other wider topics and discussions. But I mean, now we're seeing a movement towards actual certified retirement advisors and people can have these discussions. So I mean, it's probably just the impetus of like starting this conversation, but I'm sure it's going to be a much bigger industry. And I think another thing too is this sort of openness of the generation to even therapy or a psychologist or something like that. Like you said, I mean, 40 hours a week is thousands of hours a year, and not only in the year, but like 22 years if that is, of filling all that time, and especially as your needs change, as your physical requirements change and stuff like that, starting to pick up new hobbies and stuff to fill that time that's not always what you were able to do before. But yeah, just going back to that one piece too on sort of that lifestyle planning, how it relates to financial planning. I think one thing that advisors shouldn't necessarily shy away from is also putting their clients in touch with resources or online tools, even things like retirement planners or budget planning things, because I think when people can really start playing around with this trip is going to cost this much, my new bike for cycling is going to cost this much, and they can really start to envision their retirement dreams in terms of dollars and how that plays out too. I think that really helps to imagine how you're going to spend your time as well.
I think that's important. And you touched on something that I want to dig into a little bit deeper. The idea that you're retiring for and planning for retirement for 22 years. I almost want to have people go back 22 years in your own lives. And is the way that you lived those last 22 years, has it been the same? Has your habits been the same? Has your hobbies been the same? Has the people that you've hung out with been the same? And if it hasn't, which I suspect for most people it has not, there's almost a danger in sitting there thinking we're going to go into retirement and we've got this static plan that we're going to be there for the next 22 years. One thing I've heard, and I quite like this, is that people think of retirement as one continuous phase, when really it should be thought of at the very least as three different phases. There's the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is a very, call it, turn of phrase way of putting that
Yeah.
your physical and uh, your physical and your mental interests are going to change, and your abilities are going to change over that period of retirement. And to sit there and think that what you do on your day one of your retirement is going to continue to day 5,000 of your retirement is probably a disservice, I would say, to clients to think that way. And perhaps one of the low hanging fruits that an advisor can do to help clients prepare for that retirement is to get them to think along these lines, that at the very least entertain the possibility that your retirement isn't going to look the same from beginning to end.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that, I mean, it's kind of more philosophical as well, but goal-based investing is very important in the sense of helping decide those milestones of what you want to accomplish. And I mean, our site as well covers a bunch of different topics, and we have assessments and sort of tools for content on a bunch of different things. But going back to travel, like go, slow go, and no go years, preparing your finances to get you ready for a trip to Southeast Asia at the start of your retirement when you have a little bit more vigor and a little bit more just having your stuff, like saving for that is going to mean that you can do a little bit more closer to home stuff later. So touching on these sort of life milestones in terms of your health and wellness too is important in financial planning. So certainly an open conversation between advisors and clients as well in that sense.
Your hub, as you call it, includes a directory of retirement related services. And you talked a little bit before about having a network and a community and having that conversation. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of building that network of diverse professionals that I think one will need to address the whole gamut of retirement, and what role you want to play in that conversation or that network?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing right off the bat, like you mentioned, is that in our product too, we're also trying to open people's eyes to the number and types of professionals who are out there to help with their planning. So it's not just the financial advisors or estate lawyers who people kind of quickly associate with who the professionals are going to be in their corner, but it's things all the way from like golf instructors to therapists, like we mentioned, to travel agents. And I think just the number of people you can have in your corner to really help ease through this. And I mean, our website really does preach and promote sort of DIY planning where you can, just so you're staying up to date in the conversation. But one thing that we quickly recognize right away is that there's professionals out there for a reason. It can really sort of alleviate stress and also really shore up plans to have people in your corner, like I keep saying. But I think the problem with something like Google, where if someone just goes in and searches best financial advisors near me, for example, I mean, one, you're going to get inundated with thousands of ads of different products that you weren't even looking for. And it's really hard to vet on something like that, especially for someone who's playing such an important role in your planning. And I mean, with other online directories like Yellow Pages or things like that, I mean, all these companies are being put alongside businesses that have no place being in the retirement conversation. So we just wanted to create a sort of a centralized and really trusted source where retirees could find people by hearing from people directly in their shoes, rated and reviewed by retirees. And just, again, very easy to use to find those professionals either near them or people who can service them virtually, who can really help with that planning.
I like your point. I think this idea of do it yourself, I've always believed that you needed an informed and engaged client. Too many people abdicate responsibility for things that they need to have the ultimate responsibility for because you live with it. You know, whether that's how well your portfolio does or how well your life insurance policy is working or your preparation for retirement. Yes, I think there are professionals and we can and should rely on them. But we still have a role as consumers to make sure that, you know, that we are understanding each of the different elements of our plan, how they work together. It doesn't have to be the mechanics. I don't have to be a mechanic to fix my car. I need to
Yeah.
understand that I have my brakes need to be checked or that my tires need to be changed. That's having the same level of do-it-yourselfness, together with that complement that a professional provides in the automotive sense that I think you're advocating in the retirement planning sense.
Absolutely. And like we're saying, we don't need a professional for everything necessarily. If you feel really confident in your use of kayak or Airbnb or something like that, and you can plan really awesome trips, there's no need to have a professional. But I think people do have to admit that, like we said, professionals are out there for a reason, and they can really, really help. And especially with our sort of network of professionals too, it ranges from affordability to convenience to all this stuff. So there's professionals out there for every single need as well.
So, for financial advisors who understand this change and are looking to support their clients beyond the call it the financial aspects of retirement, what are some of the practical steps that you can suggest that they can take to integrate this more lifestyle and psychological planning into their services?
Definitely. For one, I'd say staying up to date and informed with the conversations ranging from all these different topics. I think it really helps because ultimately their clients are going to bring up these discussions whether they like it or not. So just staying informed to be able to really speak on the subject is important. But also being able to have resources at the tip of your fingers to be able to recommend for, oh, I read this really great estate planning piece that I think you should check out based on your specific needs, or even having in-house like checklists or assessments. People kind of use them as referral tools or things to draw clients in, like click to download this PDF for your financial checklist. But having in-house tools doesn't take too long or too hard, but they go a long way for clients so that they can really feel assessed. And I think another final piece too on the sort of education is hosting sort of learning-based events and inviting professionals from other fields. And just like we're doing here, really kind of discuss how their fields relate, especially from the financial to the retirement holistically. So I think just keeping their clients as informed and educated as possible while staying informed themselves goes a long way.
That makes total sense. Now, Retirement.ca blends, I would say, digital technology with the offline analog retirement planning that is critical, that human touch that is still very critical. How do you see digital tools transforming the way retirement advice is delivered? I think particularly in enhancing that human element that we have of advisory services, particularly exploring some of these, what we were doing, the philosophical elements of these questions, which is a little bit maybe perhaps hard to do on the digital side of things.
For sure. Yeah, the human element point is so important because I mean, robo advisors, robo whatever, robo this, like really having that human element not only solidifies the trust, but it really can help cater to individual needs. Like everyone's plans are different and you can't have a cookie cutter thing that just provides the same service to everyone. But one thing that we saw in recent years is the ability to service clients virtually. And I'm sure that some advisors and other professionals have clients who they haven't seen in person for meetings since 2020. So it's a simple one, but making it as accessible as possible to service clients and prospects virtually not only preserves that human element, but also opens up professionals to new markets and allows Canadians from across the country to maybe access better services than they would be able to in their local markets. And maybe counterintuitively, I think a second one is sort of AI integration to be able to answer these questions or these topics and put them in the right direction with resources. Again, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the ability, what that AI has just in terms of like answering what are the CPP payment dates this year or different things like that at a click of a button, I mean, faster than someone getting on the phone with your advisor can do. So really having structured, authorized AI integration, not only on sites like ours, but I mean, big bank integrations and things like that, I think goes a long way while still preserving some of that sort of AI or that human centric feeling as well.
Now, when we chatted before, Ryan, you mentioned this concept of disenchantment valley that I really like, that some retirees experience after the so-called honeymoon phase of retirement. How do you think financial advisors can help their clients be prepared for that from a mindset perspective, but also to navigate this challenging transition?
Definitely. I think just discussing the topic at whole of the sort of disenchantment valley, seeing firsthand friends' parents go through it, my mom especially, for people who especially are decision makers in their careers and are in charge of doing things day to day. And once all that sort of stops and you have those 40 hours a week, I think it's really important to prepare ahead for something like that. I think this is where that sort of goal-based investing in terms of what advisors can do, because not only are they helping ensure that you're financially supported to do those things, it really opens up the conversation, or at least even gets the client starting to think about those things you want to do in retirement. So if you're doing that 2-5 years out ahead of a client's retirement date, them thinking like, oh yeah, I had thought that I'm going to pick up tennis, or I'm going to do a bicycle trip in the Alps or something like that. At least they have something to look forward to and to start preparing off of, as opposed to really just starting those conversations once that sort of melancholy hits of, oh yeah, I played golf this morning, what am I going to do after noon?
That's such an important concept, and not enough attention is not paid to it. If you're a financial advisor that has had an executive as a client or an entrepreneur as a client, these are people that have worked 20, 30, 40 hours a week for 30, 40, 50 years. They're achievement oriented. They've had a sense of purpose. They have had a sense of accomplishment. They've been recognized, rewarded, a sense of purpose, etc. And to your point about focusing on the non-financial elements, I think we open ourselves up as advisors and as, clients to the danger that we are one-dimensional then in retirement, right? We've had all of these other facets of our life that gave us purpose, that gave us a sense of achievement, etc. And if we're not thinking about how we're going to replace that in retirement, I think you're leading to this melancholy that you talked about, or this disenchantment valley. And the financial element is only one component, but we need to recognize, and I think advisors need to help clients recognize that there's a whole bunch of other things that they're getting from their work or from their involvement in the community or in their involvement in sports that perhaps they're not giving enough stock to, and that they will need to think about how that either continues or is replaced in their retirement.
Definitely. And I think that's why we're sort of seeing this rise in sort of secondary careers as well. I mean, in this day and age, especially having retirement be longer, for a lot of people, it helps provide some additional income and supportive income. But for the other people, like joining boards of directors or mentorship or things like that, even in just as sort of a 3 to 5 year window after retiring to sort of ease out of that working life, I think that conversation should be opened up further as well. I think a lot of people's initial gut feeling is, I'm done, I'm walking away from the office, all of this. But I mean, that hits pretty quickly, realizing that you sort of need that purpose that you were mentioning.
So, what trends do you foresee in retirement planning? I think you talked about the idea that we're getting certifications, for being a retirement coach, a retirement advisor. So the industry is understanding that there is a gap that needs to be filled with, platforms like yours that are, aiming to try to help fill it. What other trends do you see coming up in the coming years in this area?
Yes, certainly. So I think early on, I mean, well, touching back on like you said, of the sort of certified retirement planners, even if someone doesn't necessarily have someone like that, it's at least being open to the conversation. I think not that it's a stigma or a faux pas or whatever, but I think the three places that people kind of go to for their advice now is Google, their financial advisors, or their friends and family going through that. And if you don't have any friends and family going through that, being open to discussing things online, like we keep mentioning these sort of open communications online. I think there's a huge gap beyond sort of the Facebook groups and things like that for people to really come together and connect to discuss about going through these things. And it doesn't have to be therapeutic. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but just a space where like-minded people can discuss what they're going through at that time. I'd say the ability for on-the-go planning. I mean, for us, we spent a long time really sort of ensuring that our platform is the same experience on desktop it is on mobile and things like that. But having product integration where people can follow it with them, they don't have to be tied to their pen and paper at home, especially for their planning. I think that's really important as well. But in terms of sort of a larger topic, just opening up the conversation, things like governments, to things like large media outlets, to really start having this conversation about holistic planning, as opposed to only having to speak about it with your financial advisor if they're sort of hip to it.
Makes sense. So can you talk a little bit, Ryan, about what's next for Retirement.ca? What's the next year to 2 years look like? What's your product roadmap or vision for this platform?
Definitely. So for us now, we're really focusing on that product you mentioned of sort of building this network of retirement service professionals. So just making it as easily acceptable to our user base to find those people who they're looking for. So for sort of a user journey for someone who's coming on our platform, we'll walk them through sort of assessments, identifying areas where they can really see improvement
Hmm.
and put them in contact with either DIY or educational resources they can do it themselves. Or if they're really feeling like they need that professional assistance, that's sort of the next step for us, ensuring that without even having to leave the platform or going through that whole song and dance with Google, is getting them in touch with them right away. So it's been really fantastic being able to test out the product with offices around Toronto, but then really expanding that to wider markets across Canada. And then another piece too that we're always kind of playing around in the background, as I mentioned, is sort of AI integration to be able to. I mean, we have a chatbot who we get in touch with retirees every day, just who have questions, but to make that sort of a 24/7 service to answer quick questions, not deep philosophical ones necessarily, or ones relating to people's finances. But I think that would be a really good tool just to make, again, accessibility is the number one goal for us too.
That's great. Good luck to you, Ryan. I think this is a gap, as you rightly identified. It is a pressing need for Canadians, and it's nice that there's another avenue for them to answer questions that I think must be burning in the back of their mind. We are coming to the end of our podcast, so I have a few final rapid fire questions for you that I ask all of my guests. So, number one, professionally, what is the most important lesson you have learned over the years?
I'd say don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think you'll find that there's a lot more people who are willing and wanting to help than people who aren't. And retirement wouldn't be where it is today without the people who've provided sort of insight, support, and guidance along the way.
Awesome. I couldn't agree with you more. It's not a solo battle or a solo journey in any case. You just have to ask for help and be willing to accept it, I would say. And that goes not just for you, but I would say for clients looking for retirement and know who they should ask and when they should ask for help. Number two, what is one practical tip you would offer listeners keen on applying your insights?
Uh, it might sound a bit odd coming from someone who's so far away from retirement, but I just say start planning. The earlier, the better, and the easier it'll become. Whether you're like 5 or even 10 years out from retirement, there's tangible tasks and even thought exercises that you can be doing to cross off your list. And not only will you get them out of the way earlier, but it'll help prepare things in the future for sort of more detailed scenarios if you've already thought of them before.
Look, I couldn't agree with you more. This idea of planning, or the way I would frame it, is asking yourself questions. You can never start too early on it, because I think the really good questions are ones that you don't have an answer for. And you don't really need it right away, but I think you have to have that willingness to have that discomfort of that question sitting there, and it will take you time to figure out what the answer is. And most likely will probably change three times between when you first asked it and when you have to actually answer it for yourself. So I think this avoids, or at least minimizes, the risk that you pointed out earlier of this disenchantment valley, finding yourself in the middle of it, 3 years after retirement. Ryan, this has been a great conversation on a very important topic. If our listeners want to find out more about you or retirement.ca, where do they go?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Retirement.ca, retiremint.ca. And even if you don't want to sign up, we have newsletters that go a couple times a week just in terms of staying educated on the topic. Yeah, we're looking really forward to helping service more Canadians as we expand.
Ryan, awesome. Thank you for joining us today on the Future Ready Advisor.
Thank you, Sam.
In this episode, I chatted with Ryan Donovan, founder of Retirement.ca, about the evolving landscape of retirement planning and how advisors can better support clients through this significant life transition. Here are my three key takeaways. Number one, retirement planning beyond finances. Ryan and I discussed how retirement today requires more than just financial readiness. His platform, Retirement.ca, emphasizes lifestyle, social connections, and finding purpose, highlighting that clients often need help preparing for the psychological and community aspects of retirement. Advisors can add significant value by guiding clients in these areas, extending beyond traditional financial advice. Number 2, adapting to changing retirement phases. We explored the idea of retirement as a multi-phase journey, encompassing the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years, which reflects the reality of shifting health, activity levels, and personal goals over time. Helping clients think through these evolving needs allows them to approach retirement realistically and avoid the disenchantment valley, the phase when many feel unfulfilled and purposeless after the initial excitement fades. Number 3, leveraging technology with a human touch. While digital tools and AI are enhancing the accessibility of retirement planning, Ryan and I agree that the human touch remains essential. Advisors who use tech for routine tasks while prioritizing personalized, meaningful conversations with clients can more effectively address the unique challenges of modern retirement planning. You've been listening to the Future Ready Advisor. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or a rating on Spotify, or share your feedback wherever you listen. Be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. For more insights on how to keep your practice future ready, visit www.samsivarajan.com. You can find the link on the show notes. There you'll find free tools and resources, along with exclusive bonus content from these podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more strategies with you in the next episode.